let me do this. Professor Mamun Habib is a professor at School of Business and Entrepreneurship, Independent University of Bangladesh. At present, he is supervising 12 PhD scholars locally and internationally, and earlier 5 PhD scholars have graduated under him. As a PhD examiner, he has several PhD involvement at the list is very long across the globe, from Universiti Selangor, Universiti Putra Malaysia, Assumption University of Thailand, Institute of Technology and Management India, Birla Institute of Technology, Deemed University in India, National Institute of Technology in India, SOA University, Chitkara University, Aligarh Muslim University in India, University of Assumptions, Philippines. He has also around 22 years of experience in the field of teaching, training, workshop, consultancy, and research. He has published about more than 200 research papers, including conference proceedings, journal articles, book chapters, etc. Among these, he has around 75 articles from WoS Scopus Indexed. He is the editor-in-chief for International Journal of Supply Chain Management, UK, and International Supply Chain Technology Journal from USA. He serves as editor-in-chief, lead guest editor, editorial board member, reviewer of more than 60 prestigious journals, particularly in Elsevier Scopus and Thomson Reuters Web of Sciences indexed journals. As a keynote speaker, he has delivered lectures in more than 80 conferences in various countries, particularly in USA, UK, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Turkey, Korea, and obviously in India, Philippines, Greece, Bulgaria, Australia, Italy, Nigeria, etc. He has conducted more than 200 webinars, workshops, locally and internationally. He is involved with a lot of grant research projects in USA, Malaysia, Thailand, Bulgaria, European Union, India, and Bangladesh. He is a lead trainer and a Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport International, UK. So, Professor Habib, it's really an honor to be on this panel with you. And I hope we all will get a lot of insights from your lecture today. So, Professor Mamun, this stage is yours.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you so much. I'm so much honored that Dr. Rudresh Pandey is here. When I noticed that he's here, basically, he's my very good friend, and we met several times at different meetings. So, first of all, I'd like to give a special thanks to the organizer, and particularly that the 2023 ICPM committee. So, if you allow me, I'd like to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
First of all, today I'm going to discuss on the resilience in supply chain management. As you notice that our conference is the theme of the conference this time, the resilience. So basically, when you talk about the resilience in the supply chain, the first thing come up in our mind is supply chain disruption. And this disruption happens the two times. First of all, we notice that supply chain disruption during the COVID time. So during the pandemic time, we noticed that one kind of disruption. And basically, COVID has been changed, the dimension of our whole research area, the dimension of our whole thinking. And secondly, we are noticing now another supply chain disruption, and that is that due to the Russia-Ukraine war. So when this kind of disruption, the question is that how we can sustain. So in the supply chain, we are using the term that how we can resilient in supply chain management. So today my discussion will be like that. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Rudresh Pandey. He spent almost 3 minutes about my introduction. So now it is not necessary because everybody is very smart nowadays. We have a smart device. So you can click and you can explore the profiles. So basically, I like to start by the definition or basic supply chain. I believe that there are some participants, those expertise not in the the business and management, not in the supply chain. At least you can get some idea about this one, because you can apply this concept in everywhere. manufacturing industry, even the service industry as well. So when you think about the supply chain, means it's a one chain that will start from the supplier and finish to the customer end. So when you say the supply chain, means it's a one chain that will start from supplier and finish to the customer end. And now when you're talking about this chain, we have to mention the three things like the raw material, finished product. Raw materials will come up on the supply end. After the processing, finished products will deliver to the customer end. Then we have to think flow of goods. Basically, it is the flow of materials, flow of information, and flow of fund. So basically, there are three flows: flow of goods or flow of materials, flow of information, flow of fund. It is our discussion how we can ensure during the disruption time, how we can manage this one. I think you notice that we also mentioned flow of service. We can apply the flow of service for the service industry. So basically, we can apply this concept of supply chain in the both area, manufacturing and service industry. This is a very basic supply chain for manufacturing industry. I don't want to talk too much about this one. More or less, we have some idea. What I said just now, the three basic entities, raw materials come from the supply end. After the processing, finished product delivered to the customer end. And then flow of goods from supply to customer, flow of information, and flow of fund. So that is our thinking then how we can manage this whole chain, how we can ensure that our customers, they have to receive the product on time. If you look very carefully when you talk about the basic supply chain for manufacturing industry, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, there is intermediate bodies. It is very interesting thing is that it depends on your size of the business, size of the organization. If it is a small company, then you can think that's only just manufacturer factory. So that means suppose if you think that like the pharmaceutical industry, your production capacity 500. So that time you just think that okay, supplier, factory, manufacturer, then customer will come to the factory, they can collect the medicine from there. If you think that like 5,000 medicine production capacity, that time you should think, okay, supplier, manufacturer, then one retailer, outlet, from where customer they can collect the product. If your production capacity 50,000, that time you have to think that like the distribution center, or maybe the not only one distribution center, maybe the two distribution center. Each distribution center will be responsible for the 5 retailers. So that means for 2 distribution centers, you have the like 10 retailers. So it means that it depends on your size of the business, how you design your supply chain. If I talk about the Tesco, if I talk about the Walmart, Walmart, if you look very carefully, they have the lots of outlets in the one country. And it's a chain shop all over the world. So they are following this one, that large scale. So even their factories, maybe the few factories, their distribution center, maybe the few hundred distribution center all over the world. The retail is a few thousands retailers all over the world. So it depends on you, but always look very carefully. Supply chain is available. So what is the supply chain? Start from the supplier and finish the customer end. We have to convert the raw materials to finished product. Basic supply chain for the service industry. If you look very carefully, the service industry, then the same process that the raw materials come from the supplier end. After the processing, finished product delivered to the customer end. And there's a service provider. So if you ask me about the service industry supply chain management, I would say the hospital supply chain management. I would say the education supply chain management. So if you look very carefully, this is the education institution. It is the hospital. And now there is one very basic difference between the manufacturing and service industry. Service industry, we are assuming the non-profit organization. Service industry, your main target, you like to contribute to the society. Your main target, you like to add the values. On the other, manufacturing industry, your main target, how can you enhance the profit? How can you improve the operations so that you can get the better quality products for getting the better profit. But service industry, your top to bottom, your thinking is that how you can add the values to society. So that's why you can see in the service and supply chain management, there is another body, the consumer. Consumer means that end customer, end user, final customer, final user. So what I said here, society is the consumer. So this is some examples, application you can think about supply chain management in manufacturing industry, vegetable supply chain, poultry supply chain, fishing industry supply chain, RNG supply chain, textile, and so on. And service industry supply chain, I already mentioned. And now, when you talk about the supply chain, that time, if you look very carefully, you have to understand, definitely we have to think some few facilities, few functions and activities. I would say that when you talk about how we can manage this supply chain, we have to think this kind of sequence of organizations. So the next question will be there, what kind of facilities, what kind of functions and activities are involved? If you talk about the facilities, then warehouse is storage. So we have to keep the raw materials, we have to keep the finished product. You know, what I said today, the resilient supply chain, that time it is a question, how we can manage the disruption in a warehouse. Factory, definitely the factory must be there, processing center, distribution center, retail outlet must be there, and then backup office. If you go to the 7-Eleven or Family Mart, we can see the 24 hours operations. But it is not very easy that how they can manage the 24 hours operation. So they have the strong backup office. Without this support, they cannot manage the product availability. And then there will be some functional activities. What kind of functional activities? Suppose if you see this one, the forecasting. We should think about the forecasting to maintain the supply and demand. Purchasing at the supply end, when you particularly like to purchase the raw materials. Inventory management. When you're keeping the product in the inventory, how you can manage this one? Do you want to use the barcode system? Do you want to use a QR code? Or you like to use the human counting? Information management, flow of information. It is a flow of information from the supplier to customer end. I would say that during the pandemic time, we are facing the issues here, information management, because our information was distorted. At first, we thought that our maybe our pandemic will be continued next 3 months or 6 months. Then we understood, no, it will take maybe 1 year. So you see, information is very important. Another one thing we faced during the pandemic time, sometimes some of the supply chain was based on the paperwork, paper-based. But in this COVID time, when there was a restriction, we cannot go out. That time, all information should be the paperless information. So there is that another digital information system, digital integrated management system. Quality assurance is the most major issue in the quality, and definitely the scheduling, on-time delivery, on-time service, and production and delivery. We should think about this one, on-time production, on-time delivery. Customer service definitely is a part of this one because you know that whatever we do, our ultimate target the customer, whether they are satisfied or not. So keep our mind that when you work on the whole supply chain, our ultimate target the customer service. Now, come to our historical evolution of supply chain management. I like to discuss this issue because try to understand how you are getting the supply chain management. Basically, today I am talking about the resilience in supply chain management. But once a time, we did not use the term supply chain management. We used the term the logistic management. And logistic term was initiated in 1950s. Logistic term was initiated by the 1950s. And basically, it was started their journey in the defense, military. And then, still, if you ask anyone, what is supply chain, they'll start to think for the logistic management because it was a very predefined for a long time. And then around the 1970s, matured the logistic concept. And then, formally, supply chain management, they started their journey after this one, around the 1980s. So formally, supply chain management started their journey in the 1980s. And that time, we are assuming that all will be incorporated in one umbrella, that is supply chain. Logistic management, inventory management, transportation management, warehouse management, our flow of information, flow of fund, everything will be integrated within one umbrella, that is supply chain management. So, and then initially, most of the research on supply chain management was in the manufacturing industry, particularly materials flow, particular flow of goods, something like that. And then the services supply chain management, they started their journey in 1995. Supply chain management, they started their journey in the service industry in 1995. That is another milestone. And then you can see there are other milestones, supply chain management in the education institutions. It is one of the examples of the service industry by the Professor Lau in 2007. And then ITESC model was developed. ITESC means Integrated Tertiary Education Supply Chain Management model was developed. It is also one of the research on supply chain management in the service industry, particularly the education institutions. So if you look very carefully, the historical perspective, particularly supply chain management started in the 1980s. And basically 1980s, it started, in USA. And then after the US any new theory, then it will go to the European country. Then it will move to the Asian developed country, like the Singapore, Japan, something like that. Then it will move to our South Asian country, like India and other countries as well. So it means that our Asian country, you can see the supply chain concept after the 2000, not before the 2000. So now you understand our COVID period we passed in 2020. So that means this is the first time we are facing the COVID, we are facing the supply chain disruption during the pandemic time after establishing the supply chain management concept. And maybe next time, if we face the pandemic again, we keep in mind that how we can manage the supply chain disruption. And that's why today our discussion is that resilience in supply chain management, so that we can apply these findings for future supply chain disruption. If you look very carefully, you can see this one. I already mentioned you can apply supply chain management in the different area. I don't want to talk too much. This is some of the examples: RMG's industry, fishing industry, textile industry. This is supply chain partner measurement in manufacturing industry. This is the tourism supply chain management. It's the example of the service in supply chain management. This is supply chain management for the educational institutions, particularly tertiary education institutions. So this is another example of service in supply chain management. And there is the model ITESCM model, what I said earlier, integrated tertiary education supply chain management model. So I like to remind you again, if anybody interested about the supply chain management model for the higher education institutions, you could communicate with me later on. Maybe I could assist you. So now come to our next part. So what I said at first, we discussed about the supply chain. So I believe that everybody you have some idea about the supply chain management. Now we can go to our next one, that is the COVID period time. If you ask me about the pandemic time, I would like to start in this way. Coronavirus, our COVID-19, has revealed the fragility of our modern supply chain. So now we understood that fragile our modern supply chain. And then when the country was locked down one by one, that time we understood we need the diversification of sourcing. We need the digitalization in order to keep that or building the stronger, smarter supply chain and ensure the lasting recovery. And COVID period has hit our global trade and investment at the unprecedented speed and scale. And the multinational companies initially they faced supply shock, and then they noticed the demand shock as more and more countries order people to stay at their home. And then though there is some initiative from the government level, because the individual consumer suddenly struggle to procure the basic products and materials, or are forced to confront the fragility of the modern supply chain. So it is an urgent need to design a smarter, stronger, more diversified supply chain. So it's one kind of lesson in our whole pandemic time. The disruptions are gradually being held everywhere. Ports to factory, storehouses, delivery channel, everywhere. And disruptions was available in the transportation, warehouse, even supply the raw materials, procurement, distribution channel. Even the rural farm level, you can see this disruption. So that means you can see this disruption everywhere, every end of the supply chain management. This is one of the examples of supply chain disruption around the 2020 May. So that time it happens that it's one of the examples of the port. You can see this is Chittagong port in Bangladesh. The storage capacity 49,019 TEUs. And during that time, 2020 May, it was more than the storage capacity, the products, availability of products. But unfortunately, they could not deliver. And not only that, 11 vessels at jetties were waiting for offloading of goods. And another 30 containers, vessels at outer anchorage for berthing, they're waiting. So if you look very carefully, the whole supply chain has been collapsed. Initially, when COVID-19 started their journey, we assumed that, okay, planning is good, but the remaining three pillars like sourcing, making delivery is bad because no transportation, we don't have enough human resource, something like that. But after the few months, sorry, after the few months, particularly the 1 year of COVID, we understood no, our planning wasn't working. Even our sourcing, making, and delivery was not that bad. It's a worse situation now. So what I said that this is one kind of interview, and we noticed that they face the disruption in the three areas, like port area, factory area, and transportation. And their ship loaded with goods are stuck at ports. They don't get enough people to run the production and drive the trucks to carry their commodities. But this is the one phenomenon I discussed. But if you come to the best example of such disruption during the pandemic time, that is that Apple. And this is one of the best examples of such disruption is that Wistron Corporation, one of the Apple suppliers. Can you imagine that they are located in the China? So China is locked down at first. So now they're facing lots of issues with this one. And that's why they're now planning to move from China to different countries like India, Vietnam, Mexico. And their target will be the different continent. So maybe one continent will be closed, but another continent will be open. So what they face this time, the China issue, so they try to recover this issue for future time. Another example, the Samsung, the motherboard is the South Korea. So they're also facing the same issue that suddenly that there's a lockdown. So then how they can manage the raw material absorption, how they can send the products to the retailer end. So now they're also thinking they like to move on the diversification option to Vietnam and India. So that is the way that how supply chain disruption changing the business mind. So now I like to give you some recommendation that how we can manage this supply chain disruption. The first of the micro supply chain. We should move to the micro supply chain instead of the macro supply chain. If you ask me about this one, I'd like to say, suppose we have to go to the agility speed into our supply chain by creating a micro supply chain. What is that? Finite and decentralized as aluminium product models. Maybe you no need to think of the whole country. Maybe you can think of the one side, like the southern side or the western, northern side, something like that. I'd like to give the one example. In Malaysia, Johor Bahru, close to the Singapore, suddenly it happens that due to the Singapore situation, Johor Bahru was a lockdown. But, interesting thing is that their factory in the Johor Bahru, they like to bring the raw materials from the Penang. Penang was open, but unfortunately, they couldn't bring the product to the Johor Bahru. And again, Johor Bahru is open, but the Penang is the lockdown. So they cannot bring the raw materials from the Penang. So what I said that nowadays, why not you can make some strategies like that? Buy where you make and make where you sell. I again use the term, buy where you make and make where you sell. So that's why you use the term micro supply chain. Secondly, supply diversification. Maybe we have to go to the multiple suppliers, and maybe we have to go to the dual sourcing of the critical components. I know that many factories, those are dependent on the China, even very small raw materials. So suddenly China was locked down. They couldn't get the raw materials, and the whole production was stuck. So it happens. So now we said no need to do this one. We can do some diversification in supplier selection. First, we can say, suppose we have either three options. The first tier supplier, second tier supplier, third tier supplier. Supplier A, supplier B, supplier C. Our first target supplier A is a global raw materials. Second also supplier B, maybe it's a local raw material. The third one also the locals, but the low price. So now you have a three option. You have to make the good relation with all suppliers. And then you have to check if you couldn't get the supplier A, then try to think of supplier B. If you couldn't get the supplier B, you can think of supplier C. And the third one, the supply chain strategize. There is no, what I said that, there is no the long process of there is no sustainable process in supply chain because it's always changing the situation. So what you can do, our ultimate long-term strategy, but we have to go critical test. We have to check our strategy, existing strategy. And then based on that, we have to revise. So maybe after 2 or 3 months, we can revise our strategy. And our one of the few targets you have to keep in mind, organizational development, organizational growth, and climate change. Keep in mind, and climate change. So that environmental is another issue. So when you do go for the strategy, maybe you have to change the strategy. Nowadays, when you make any strategy, you have to think of the SDG goals. So that is some things you have to keep in mind in our whole supply chain strategy. You know, what I said earlier, that if you look very carefully, we can see the decentralization of the manufacturing capacity. So maybe, did you notice that COVID time, the people, they don't want to go to the shopping mall. They like to get the product at their home. So they like to bring the production home. Can you imagine that Walmart, when the COVID, the 2020, mid of the 2020, the time, they recruited the human resource just for home delivery service. So it happens. It happens. So there is another way you can go to the next level of the how you can manage supply chain disruption. That is the automation. And what I said earlier, the mini operating model, small batch production. So the transition to a new model for supply chain will be underpinned by a rapid wholesale digitization of the paperwork that accompanies global trade. And now, what I said just now, we have to check this one very carefully. We have to check the technology, the relationship between the buyers and suppliers. So it should be changed from the paper-based to the technology-based. And we have to go for the everywhere environment-friendly, so less paperwork. We have to think of the digitalization and the buyer-supplier relationship to create that robust supply chain so that we can identify the supply with the less time consuming. With technology, supply chain could quickly switch to alternative providers, a regular supply chain face disruption. And maybe it is that one of the options that how we can create the smart, agile, industry-driven supply chain is the key to building a global trade and investment network that is capable of weathering the future storms. And now comes our last one. What I said that now let us start to think, because we are talking about the resilient supply chain. So when we have faced this kind of supply chain disruption, how can the resilient in supply chain? I already mentioned our main target, that digitalization in the buyer-supplier relationship, and our target is that building the robust supply chain. In that case, we can apply that our technological advancement like artificial intelligence, machine learning, Industrial Revolution 4, 5, automation, robots, cloud computing, Internet of Things, blockchain, big data, etc. Why you have to depend on the paperwork? We have to need the big data. China was developed due to the big data. They always invented the data.
We'll keep some time for question, Professor Mamun.
Yes, I'm going to finish in 1 minute.
Thank you, sir.
So that is the one option. We can apply the technology advancement. So let us create our smart, agile, industry-driven, resilient supply chain with maintaining the ecosystems, which is the key to building a global trade and investment network that is capable of weathering the future storms, like this kind of supply chain disruption we can manage. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Mamun. It's really nice to hear and attend a lecture from you every time. You really started from a very basic of explaining supply chain, and that was really so nice and how a flow of services you explained, flow of goods, manufacturing. You explained your model also, which is ITESCM, ITE Supply Chain Management Model, which is your model. And I'll ask everyone who's present here, who's listening, whoever is interested, can contact Professor Mamun for knowing more about this model, and maybe a research collaboration with you, sir. We can look forward. Also, you spoke of macro and micro supply chain management, which was really important. One thing which I really noticed and liked is your sentence, your keyword, which you said, buy where you make and make where you sell. And this is what is explains supply chain in this era, which is post-pandemic, which is changing, and how decentralization of manufacturing is taking place. Now, I invite people who are listening. They have a golden opportunity to ask and discuss few questions with Professor Mamun, as we are running short of time. I'll just take one or two maybe questions. So if you have questions, you can raise your hand or you can type in the chat box also. Um, People who are listening offline, they can go to the organizing committee and ask their question, and the committee will put the question in the chat, and I'll ask on your behalf. So if there are any questions, you can ask. Um, so
Gave one question.
yes.
Thank you very much. For developing countries like Indonesia, which has limited technology, could you suggest how to maintain domestic supply chain in the middle of trade war of imported and cheap supply chain? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think if I understood, I'm not clear about your question. You're talking about the domestic supply chain and global supply chain, right? Yeah. So that's very interesting thing is that during the COVID period, we got this message that our first target will be that sustain in the domestic way. So the domestic supply chain is the first target. So if you keep the sustain in the domestic supply chain, maybe then you can think the global supply chain. Because at pandemic time, we understood the problem of import and export. And so that's why we suggest earlier that it would be better you have to start with the internally a domestic supply chain. Even if the large country like the Indonesia, maybe we can divide the southern side on the west and northern side. Maybe we can divide this kind of micro supply chain, the micro supply institute of the macro supply chain, mini operating models. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Professor Mamun. Thank you, sir, for taking this time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you again here. Thank
Sure,
you.
sir,
Thank
sure.
you.
And we look forward to meeting you in India, sir.
Yeah, inshallah. See you again.
We'll
Okay.
see you
Bye-bye.
in Delhi, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.